I can still remember the exact moment when I first became aware of it. The subtle shift, the flicker of awareness that things were not as they seemed. It wasn't a dramatic event, no grand revelation or flashing light, but more like a door creaking open in the deepest part of my mind, letting in a faint but undeniable light. The third eye, or so I would later learn it was called, had always been something of a mystery to me. It was one of those concepts I had heard mentioned in passing, an idea that seemed almost too abstract, too mystical to be real. But that moment, that quiet instant of knowing, changed everything. It wasn't as if I had decided one day that I wanted to open my third eye, nor had I set out on some grand spiritual quest. In truth, the thought of awakening or enlightenment had always seemed distant, even out of reach. Something for the gurus or yogis, not for someone like me. I was just an ordinary man, trying to make sense of my life, trying to find peace amid the noise. But over time, I felt a growing hunger inside, a longing for something beyond the surface, beyond the distractions of the everyday world. My life had felt routine, work, relationships, the usual push and pull of personal desires, anxieties, and goals. I was constantly chasing something, success, approval, happiness, only to find that each time I reached one goal, another would arise, just out of reach. Nothing ever felt entirely fulfilling. It was as if there was always something more, something deeper, just beyond the edge of my vision. I had become tired of the chase, and it wasn't until I turned inward that I truly began to find the answers. It started with meditation. It wasn't something I had expected to find such meaning in, but a friend had suggested it during a time when I was feeling particularly overwhelmed, burnt out, and detached from myself. I thought it would just be a way to relax my mind, a moment of calm in an otherwise chaotic life. But when I began to sit quietly, close my eyes, and breathe deeply, something inside me began to shift. At first, it was frustrating. My mind was like a whirlwind, full of thoughts, worries, and distractions. I could hardly sit still for more than a few minutes. But as I persisted, something unexpected began to happen. Slowly, my breath became my anchor. The distractions began to fade, and in the silence that followed, I began to notice things I hadn't before. Tiny details that had always been there, but had never registered. The way my body felt as I sat in stillness, the rhythm of my heartbeat, the subtle hum of life in the air, the sensation of gravity pulling me toward the earth. I began to feel connected to my own body in a way I hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't just that I was more present. It was as though the present moment itself became more vivid. And then, it happened. The first time I truly felt the presence of my third eye, I was deep in meditation, lost in the awareness of my breath. I had been focusing on a specific mantra, repeating it in my mind like a prayer. I had no expectations. I wasn't trying to achieve anything. But suddenly, a feeling, almost imperceptible at first, began to bloom in the center of my forehead. It wasn't physical, but it was palpable. It felt like a pressure, a slight pressure, almost like someone was gently pressing their thumb to the space between my eyebrows. At first, it was subtle, a light tingling sensation, like the softest pulse of energy. But then it began to grow ever so gradually until it felt as though a subtle vortex had opened up right in the middle of my head. I was still observing, wondering if I was imagining it, but as I let my awareness remain focused there, I felt the pressure intensify. It wasn't uncomfortable, quite the opposite. It was soothing, like an internal unraveling, as if a lock had been turned in my mind. I continued to breathe, allowing the sensation to expand, deepening my awareness of the space at the center of my forehead. And then it was as though a veil had lifted. Suddenly, I was aware of something else, something more, something beyond the familiar landscape of my thoughts. It wasn't just the ordinary thoughts I had every day, but a deeper, more primal awareness. I felt a rush of clarity, a sudden expansion of consciousness, and in that moment I understood that there was so much more to reality than what I had been perceiving. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing a vast and hidden world that had been there all along, waiting for me to see it. And I had no words to describe it. There was only a knowing, a deep, quiet knowing that I had just glimpsed the edge of something profound. Over the following weeks, I dove deeper into this practice, not knowing exactly what I was doing or what I was searching for, but simply allowing myself to explore. I began to feel drawn to this space between my eyebrows, as if it held the key to understanding something about myself. It became my point of focus in every meditation. I imagined it like a window that, once opened, would allow me to see a greater, deeper reality. And as I focused there, more experiences began to unfold. The first major shift I noticed was in my perception of the world around me. It started with my intuition. I began to sense things before they happened, to know things that I had no logical reason to know. It was as if the world was full of hidden currents, subtle energies that I could now perceive. I would be in a conversation with someone, and I could feel their true feelings beneath the surface, sometimes even when they didn't say a word. I could tell when someone was being dishonest, when they were holding back, or when they were struggling with emotions they didn't express openly. At first, this was disorienting. I wasn't sure what to do with all this new information. I wanted to retreat, to hide from the barrage of hidden truths I was now aware of. But the more I practiced, the more I came to accept that this new awareness was not a curse, but a gift. The ability to see through the illusions, to sense the truth beneath the surface, was not something to fear. It was a tool. And just like any tool, I had to learn how to wield it wisely. I began to see that this deeper perception was not just about knowing other people's thoughts, but about understanding myself more deeply. It was as though the third eye was a mirror, reflecting my own hidden truths, showing me parts of myself that I had never truly acknowledged before. This self-awareness was not always easy to embrace. As I began to tune into my own energy, I saw all the places where I was holding on to fear, resentment, anger, and insecurity. I saw how I had constructed walls around myself to protect me from pain, how I had avoided facing the parts of me that I considered weak or unworthy. There were moments when this truth felt like a burden, like too much to bear. But it was also liberating. By seeing these patterns, I was able to begin the process of healing them. I could no longer ignore the cracks in my own armor. And yet, at the same time, the third eye revealed beauty in places I had never noticed. It opened my awareness to the subtle energies around me. Energy in the air, in the trees, in the spaces between people. I could feel the life in everything. The earth beneath my feet, the wind on my skin, the sound of birds in the distance, the hum of the universe itself. It was as if I had awakened to the sacredness of life, to the divinity in every moment and every interaction. Even my dreams began to shift. They became more vivid, more meaningful, more prophetic. I began to have dreams that felt like visions, dreams that guided me, showed me paths I hadn't considered, and warned me of potential dangers. These dreams felt as real as my waking life, sometimes even more so. I started journaling them every morning, trying to decode their meanings, to see what messages my subconscious was trying to send. As I did, I began to notice how many of the dreams would align with events in my waking life. I saw that the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds were more fluid than I had ever realized. But perhaps the most profound shift I experienced came when I began to realize the interconnectedness of all things. The third eye is not just a window into the self, but a portal to understanding the unity of all life. I started to see that everything, every person, every plant, every animal, every object, was part of the same web of existence. The separateness I had once felt from the world began to dissolve, and I began to feel a profound sense of unity with everything around me. The distinctions between me and you, here and there, inside and outside, began to blur. There was no more them, no more us. There was only life. This awareness, this opening, didn't happen all at once. It wasn't an instantaneous process, nor is it something that has a definitive end. There have been ups and downs, moments of clarity and confusion. Some days, I feel like I am drifting, not fully in tune with my third eye. Other days, I feel so deeply connected to everything that I am overwhelmed by the beauty of it all. But one thing is certain: I can never go back. Once the third eye is opened, the world is never the same. I have seen beyond the veil, and I can't unsee what I have seen. I have glimpsed the truth, that we are all interconnected, that life is sacred, that awareness is the key to understanding. And now, my journey is not about seeking enlightenment, but about learning how to live in harmony with this newfound awareness. It's a journey that I know will never end. The more I open my third eye, the more I realize that there is always more to discover, more to learn, more to experience. And yet I feel more at peace than ever before. Because I know now that I am part of something greater, something beyond the surface of things. I have opened my third eye, and in doing so I have opened my heart to the mysteries of the universe.